This is a fictional narrative account, created exclusively for entertainment purposes. They slept in the same bed, but according to some versions, they were already living in different worlds. Money was never the problem. Time was. What you are about to hear is a fictional narrative account, reconstructed from unproven versions and theories, created exclusively for entertainment purposes. The complete truth may never have come to light. According to reports, Eduardo built everything from scratch. He worked too much, slept too little, gave up weekends, holidays, and even moments that never come back. None of this was ever proven. What is known is only what was told later. Success came, stability came, money came, but according to some versions, something was left behind. Laura, his wife, clearly remembered when everything was simpler. Unhurried dinners, long conversations, plans made while looking into each other's eyes. Over time, those things kept being postponed. We'll talk later. Next week I'll make it up to you. I can't right now. According to reports, these phrases began to repeat more often than hugs. Eduardo was always physically present, but emotionally distant. None of this was ever confirmed, but all versions agree on one thing. Laura began to feel alone, even while accompanied. She didn't complain, didn't argue, didn't demand. She waited. She waited for him to notice, waited for him to slow down, waited for the marriage to become a priority again. But time passed, and the silence grew. According to some versions, Laura began to change little by little. Less enthusiasm, less patience, less initiative. Eduardo didn't notice, or maybe he noticed too late. Work continued to demand everything, and he believed he was doing it for the family. None of this was ever proven. What is known is that, while he was building an empire, the relationship was wearing down in silence. Laura began spending more time away from home. At first as a distraction, then as a habit. Simple conversations became rare. Lingering looks disappeared. According to reports, it was in this empty space that something dangerous began to arise. Not suddenly, not as a plan, but as a feeling, the feeling of being seen again. Someone listened to Laura. Someone asked how she was. Someone noticed details. Eduardo no longer noticed. None of this was ever proven, but the versions point to the same conclusion. Loneliness doesn't need physical abandonment to exist. It grows when there is no emotional presence. Laura knew it was wrong. According to reports, she fought against it, tried to distance herself, tried to ignore it. But the emptiness was large, and the attention seemed too small to refuse. Meanwhile, Eduardo continued his intense routine, meetings, trips, important decisions, without realizing that, at home, something was about to break. None of this was ever confirmed. What is known is that this phase did not end in conversation. It ended in a choice, a silent choice, impulse, and, according to some versions, one that would change everything. According to some versions, Laura never woke up one day thinking about destroying her own marriage. Nothing happened abruptly. Nothing was planned. It was a silent accumulation. Eduardo's absence was not aggressive. It was constant. And according to reports, that hurt more than open arguments. He came home late, left early, always tired, always busy. When he was home, he was on his phone, on the computer, lost in distant thoughts. Laura tried to talk, tried to start conversations, tried to create moments, but almost always heard automatic responses. I can't right now. We'll talk later. This is important. According to reports, she began to wonder when the marriage had stopped being important too. None of this was ever proved. What is known is only what was told later. Little by little, Laura stopped insisting, stopped waiting, stopped demanding, and that, according to some versions, was the beginning of the mistake. She began to find outside what she no longer found at home. First in innocent conversation, then in laughter, then in attention. Nothing happened immediately, but something changed. According to reports, there was someone who listened, who asked questions, who looked at her as if she still mattered. Laura knew she was crossing a line. She felt guilt even before committing any act. She tried to distance herself, tried to rationalize, tried to remember everything she had built alongside Eduardo. But the emptiness spoke louder, and according to some versions, the moment came when the decision was made, not out of courage, but out of weakness. None of this was ever proved. What is known is that Laura did something she never imagined she would do, and in the very next instant, came the regret. Not the loud regret, full of drama, but a silent one, heavy, difficult to carry. According to reports, she returned home feeling different, emotionally dirty, distant from herself. Eduardo did not notice, or perhaps did not want to notice. He continued with the same routine, and Laura now carried a secret heavier than the loneliness she felt before. None of this was ever confirmed, but the versions agree. Guilt began to consume everything. Laura avoided her husband's gaze, avoided his touch, avoided deep conversations, not for lack of love, but out of shame. According to reports, she spent sleepless nights, reliving the choice, wishing she could go back. But time does not go back. What seemed like an escape became a prison. She realized something painful. The problem was never Eduardo working too much. It was the lack of dialogue, the lack of confrontation, the lack of boundaries. And now the consequence was real. According to some versions, Eduardo began to notice changes, not specific ones, but a strange feeling. Laura was different, more distant, more restrained. He couldn't explain it, but something was out of place. None of this was ever proven. What is known is that the silence between them became heavier than ever. And while Laura tried to deal with the guilt, Eduardo was about to discover that professional success protects no one from personal losses. Because according to reports, the truth does not usually stay hidden for long. According to some versions, Laura's regret did not fade with time. It grew. Each day by Eduardo's side became more difficult. Not for lack of love, but because guilt occupied every space. She watched her husband in silence. She saw the exhaustion. She saw the effort. She saw the dedication that once seemed like absence. And that made everything worse. According to reports, Laura began to notice details she had ignored. The quick messages saying he would arrive late. The short calls in the middle of the day just to ask if everything was okay. The attempts, even if flawed, to be present. None of this was ever proved, but the versions suggest that her perspective began to change. Eduardo was not indifferent. He was exhausted, and this realization struck Laura like a delayed blow. According to some versions, she thought about telling the truth, rehearsed sentences, imagined reactions, tried to find the right moment, but fear spoke louder. Fear of losing everything, fear of destroying what still remained, fear of not being forgiven. Meanwhile, Eduardo began to feel something strange. Not certainty, but unease. According to reports, he felt there was something Laura was not saying. The avoided gaze, the restrained touch, the overly careful answers. None of this was ever proven, but doubt began to settle in. Eduardo started coming home earlier on some days, tried to revive old conversations, create moments. Laura responded, but she was distant, present in body, absent in mind. And that, according to some versions, increased the suspicion. The silence between them became unbearable. It was no longer empty. It was heavy. Laura lived in constant alert. Every simple question felt like a threat. Every longer conversation felt like an interrogation. She began to analyze every word, every expression, every silence. According to reports, sleeping became difficult. The fear of being discovered would not let her rest. And the worst part was not the possibility of financial loss. It was the possibility of losing Eduardo. Because too late she understood. It was never about money. It was never about time. It was about connection. Eduardo in turn felt divided between the work that demanded everything from him and the marriage that clearly asked for attention. According to some versions, he began to question choices, the pace, the priorities, the price he was paying. None of this was ever proved. What is known is that both were trapped in a situation created by silence, fear, and lack of dialogue, until, according to reports, something happened. Not a direct discovery, not concrete proof, but a detail out of place, an interrupted conversation, an unexpected reaction, a moment too small to be explained. and too big to be ignored. Eduardo realized, not what had happened, but that something had happened, and that realization changed everything. Because, according to some versions, when trust is shaken, even without proof, nothing remains the same. Laura felt it. She saw it in his eyes, in the way he spoke, in the sudden distance. Fear turned into despair. According to reports, she understood that time was running out, that the secret would not survive much longer, and now, that the secret would not survive much longer, and now the decision was different: to keep hiding, or to face the truth. According to some versions, the truth did not come in the form of shouting, nor arguments, nor an emotional explosion. It came in silence. Eduardo could no longer ignore what he was feeling. It wasn't certainty. It was something worse. Doubt. He began to observe more, to listen less to the words, and more to what was hidden between them. Laura noticed. According to reports, she felt it in the way he looked at her. There was no accusation, but there was distance. And that hurt more than any confrontation. She knew she couldn't continue like that. The weight was too heavy. The constant fear was slowly destroying everything. According to some versions, the decision to speak did not come from courage. It came from exhaustion. She could no longer bear to carry it alone. The conversation happened at an ordinary moment, without preparation, without a dramatic setting, just two tired adults, sitting face to face. Laura began to speak in a low voice, trembling, straight to the point. None of this was ever proven. What is known is only what was told later. She didn't try to justify herself, didn't blame work, didn't blame money. She took responsibility for the mistake. She spoke of the emptiness, of the loneliness, of the wrong choice, and of the immediate regret. Eduardo listened to everything in silence. According to reports, he didn't raise his voice, didn't ask questions at that moment, didn't react the way Laura imagined. He simply listened, and that made it even harder, because, according to some versions, his silence said more than any words. When Laura finished, she didn't ask for forgiveness, didn't ask to stay, didn't ask for anything. She knew that some decisions do not allow for requests. Eduardo took a few seconds before responding, maybe minutes. According to reports, he spoke little. He said he had always believed he was doing everything for the family, that he thought the sacrifice was temporary, that success would make up for it. But he realized, too late, that there is no future that pays for absence in the present. None of this was ever confirmed, but all versions agree on something important. They're both recognized different mistakes that led to the same place. The conversation did not solve everything. It didn't heal anything immediately, but it broke the silence. According to some versions, they decided to separate for a while, not out of hatred, but for clarity. Eduardo slowed down his work pace, not out of guilt, but out of understanding. Laura began to deal with the consequences of the choice she made, without excuses, without shortcuts. The future was not painted as happy or tragic. It was left open, because, according to reports, real life rarely offers perfect endings. Some versions say there was rebuilding, others suggest there was separation. None of this was ever proven. What is known is that both changed. Eduardo understood that money does not protect relationships. Laura understood that silence does not save marriages. And that understanding came at a high cost. Perhaps the greatest regret was not the betrayal, but everything that was not said before it. Because, according to some versions, when dialogue dies, anything can take its place, and there is not always a way back. If this story made you reflect, leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more fictional narrative accounts, and watch the next video suggested on the screen now. See you in the next story.